Let's go. I could do one of these.
Nerd Reactor, roll out.
All right, we're here with the man himself. We're here with Hellboy. Jack,
Slim down.
what can you tell us about your performance as far as what did you want to bring to this character? As far as you're in a different Hellboy's at a different time period than we've seen in other portrayals. What was something you wanted to get out of this character or present with this character?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because it is set in the late 50s, so it is technically a period piece, although it's not like a heavy character, but we have nuances and subtle references to the 50s, and I think me and the director even worked on some lingo, tweaked the dialogue a bit so we could be like, oh, wait, they are in the 50s. And I think the Hellboy in this movie is a younger version, not necessarily physically or aesthetically, because he's very similar. Maybe size-wise, we kept a youthful size to him instead of a full big guy. But as far as the energy he carries and the feelings he's harboring of kind of a level of humanness and vulnerability of just a guy who wants to listen to his radio and maybe take a chick out to the dance, but he looks a little different and he's kind of bummed out, you know? A little bit of that.
Yeah, and then we got to talk to your castmates, characters that we haven't seen yet on screen. This is not the group that we kind of associate Hellboy with right now, but I mean, are these characters like what is your interactions with them as far as are you guys working together as a team? Because it's obviously you have Tom seems to be like the center focal point that you're trying to help, and then also you have
Bobbie Jo.
And then you also have Bobbie Jo.
Bobbie Jo's a rookie in the department. She's also very cute, and so the relationship there isn't clear. He's obviously has to look after her. He's like the weathered, experienced detective, almost jaded. I mean, he's been with the government since he was born, and he's seen it all. There's nothing that bothers him, and she's very green, so he has to kind of look after her. But there's a bit of chemistry there that kind of wavers from platonic to maybe something different, but got to keep it professional, right? In the BPRD. And as far as Tom, he kind of comes out of nowhere. So Hellboy's instincts are like, I'm gonna keep an eye on this guy. That's his first instinct is he's gonna turn into a ghoul. So they kind of, as they go on this journey, trust develops, and he kind of starts to look after him a little bit as well. As Hellboy does always, saves the day reluctantly.
And it seems like there's definitely from just judging from the trailer, it's a darker tone, way more serious, maybe more horror style to it. And it seems, is Hellboy almost more like a detective as far as like you kind of like you're investigating this and you're unraveling whatever's happening in this small town, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's darker. It's lit cinematically. It's not poppy and glamorous, right? It's true to its comic book, right? It's darkly lit. Really love the colors in it. I hope everyone else does. And yeah, it is. It's a journey through the woods, and crazy stuff happens.
And like I was talking to Jeffrey over there, and we were talking about the Crooked Man.
Yeah.
Like, what can you give us as far as like what that character's like, and what we can expect to see once we get to see him on screen?
Man, Martin, young actor from, I believe he's from London. He was fantastic, phenomenal guy. Shout out to Martin, man. He's another guy who crushed it, worked hard. He had so much physicality, so much prosthetic and makeup, and he just brought that character to life. I don't know how much we could reveal, right? He's a demonic figure, and he has his own superpowers, and it's unexpected.
And also, just talking to Jeffrey, and he also said there was a lot of physicality with your role as well. Like, did you have to do a lot of stunts and a lot of...
Oh, yeah, rolling down hills, going through the wall. I had sheetrock in my head, flipping upside down. I mean, I did it all. It was great. I broke a couple of hands, and not my real hand, but the hand of doom. It was good. It was good.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for taking your time to talk to us. Appreciate it, and look forward to the movie, man.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, he is still, part of the BPRD. We work together, and that's like the relationship that starts off between Bobbie Jo and Hellboy. He feels young, he's like this young kid that wants to navigate the world. We end up falling into someone else's troubles, and he wants to, help out Tom Ferrell. And we go on this epic adventure together. I'd say Jack made Hellboy very human. Yeah, and grounded.
And what kind of draw you through this? Were you already like a fan of the Hellboy movies? I mean, just judging from your filmography, it seems like you kind of cater towards, or at least lean towards the nerd stuff.
Yes, no, I love it. To be fair, I hadn't really. It's hard for me to pinpoint like when Hellboy came into my life, because I feel like it's one of those household names that you either love it or you at least know of Hellboy. And that was very much the case for me too, where just getting the script and seeing Hellboy on the page, I was like, oh, this is cool. Let me read the script and see what we're trying to do here. And the fact that it's based on one of the most beloved iterations, The Crooked Man, just made it that much more exciting.
This movie definitely seems a lot more darker than the other two. It definitely seems like, just visually, it looks like it's a lot more nighttime scenes. So was there any like intense or like suspenseful scenes that you had to, film as far as like what's going on with the witches and everything?
Yeah. Listen, we were shooting in Bulgaria, and we had incredible sets. And what was so cool is a lot of these sets were, practical sets. So the church, there's a church that we shoot at, and it is, this church actually exists outside on this field. And all these outdoor scenes were so creepy and magical and powerful. And it was super fun. It was scary but fun, yeah.
And then I know you have another big nerd IP that's coming down the road. But did you get to use any of like your maybe the martial arts training you may have gotten or learned for like katana in this movie?
I actually shot Hellboy before that, so yeah.
Okay. But I mean, it definitely seems like it's a different feel as far as the film, and then you're also portraying a character that we haven't seen on screen yet, which is really interesting as far as, everybody's kind of come to know the two main, Abe Sapien and I forgot her name, I'm already drawing a blank. But I mean, what was that as far as like doing something new that fans haven't seen before, but at least it's a character that fans know of?
Yes. If my character is, well, I mean, we were talking to Mike, and I think Bobbie Jo Song is actually based on a character that does exist in the comic books themselves. He's just kind of plucked her, changed her around a little bit, and put her into this story. So I felt like, of course, her being a BPRD agent, it felt like she kind of seamlessly fit into this world. Even though she's a new character, she just, follows along, goes with the flow with Hellboy.
And then, it seems like this is kind of reminiscent of, I don't know if you were a huge fan of, the X-Files?
No. I mean, not that I'm not a fan, I just, yeah.
It's supernatural. So was there anything as far as, you have, a protocol for investigating supernatural, instances?
If I do that,
yeah,
or as my character, oh yes,
yeah.
Yes, of course, yeah. I mean, that's her job,
yeah.
Literally, right? So she's very much into researching paranormal activities, spells, witches, creatures. She's super studious, and while she goes on this journey, I think it's the first time where she's seeing some of these things that she's seen in textbooks and in the things that she's learned about in real life. And that throws her off a little bit, She's a little in over her head. She's like, oh, this monster does exist in real life. Oh, this spell is very powerful. Yeah, she goes on that journey.
We're here with Jefferson White. He plays Tom Ferrell in the film. Now, your character is a big focal point as far as this movie. It's a different story. It's a well-known story, which we Hellboy fans, but it's a more intimate story, and it has a lot to do with your character, and also your character that fans know of, but we haven't even seen yet. So that was kind of interesting. Well, what kind of is that something that kind of draw you to the project as far as doing that kind of, not only presenting that character, but doing this story that hasn't been seen yet?
Yeah, I also just found the character really compelling. So I'm a guy who, at a young age, fell in love with a witch and sold his soul to the devil. And now, as a young man, is coming back to his hometown to try to get his soul back. And I found that to be a really compelling, very human journey. And he's got so much room for growth, He's kind of a goofball, but he manages to stumble into Hellboy and Bobbie Jo, who managed to pull him along. So there's a ton of room for growth. I think the character really leaps off the page. He's super vivid in the book. Yeah, so it's so fun. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the source material, so it's a little intimidating, but it's also just such a fun world to dive into.
Now, we're seeing a completely different Hellboy here. From what I've heard from Mike and Brian, he's a little bit harder than we would normally see, as far as he's a lot younger. It's not the same as we've seen in other iterations. But what is your relationship like with Hellboy in terms of your chemistry on the screen? Are you guys? Is this like a buddy cop thing, or is it just like he's begrudgingly helping you? Or
Yeah, maybe begrudgingly helping me. I feel like his little brother a little bit. I think it's also Hellboy is such an interesting character. He has so many contradictions because he's a demon who's fighting evil, but he's also very human. He's got so much pathos. He's very compassionate. He's very non-judgmental. He sort of encounters these people and helps them no matter what their story is or no matter where they come from. And I think Jack also is an amazingly compassionate actor. I think his humanity sort of comes through his pores no matter how many prosthetics you put on him. So working with Jack was such a gift because he's capable of both the very human compassion, the listening. He's an incredible actor in a very naturalistic way, and he's an athlete who's capable of these big action scenes, these big horror scenes. We have these amazing action set pieces in this film, and also these very human, simple little scenes, and it's so fun to get to do the whole breadth of that.
Right, and then it definitely seems like this trailer, it seems a lot more horror or a lot darker than the last movies, as far as there's different scary demon stuff that was going on, but it was more world-ending. This is smaller scale, but at the same time, is it more suspense, more thriller, more?
Brian Taylor, the brilliant director, calls it folk horror.
Yeah.
It feels like a really interesting kind of genre, like a Southern Gothic folk horror. So it's kind of like an uncanny, the edge between our world and this other world. The scale is a little smaller, but because it's more grounded, when shit starts getting crazy, it feels that much realer. And we did so many practical effects in this film. There's so many strange, unnerving practical effects in the film that I think turned out so well. So it's definitely a folk horror film with some action, with a little bit of fantasy, and also with this beautiful sort of human heart.
Right, and horror is really big right now. It's getting popular. So
yeah,
I think that's actually great, because just judging from the trailer, I was like, oh yeah, this is different. This is not. I love the past films, but it looks like they were trying to do something different. And the Crooked Man is a pretty well known folklore legend. And,
yeah.
What can you give us as far as your interactions with the Crooked Man? What can you tell us? Obviously without giving too much away.
Oh man, he's so creepy. The actor's name is Martin, and he's got a theater background. And the physicality of that performance. On the page, the Crooked Man is a sort of impossible character to play. It's like he's got a very strange posture. He's a very larger than life character on the page, and that's a real challenge as an actor, right? How do you step into something that isn't human, that is something besides human? And the makeup artist did an incredible job. He was very unpleasant to be around. The performer, Martin, was an amazing actor, and also the prosthetics, the costume, the way Brian lit it. It's a very effectively chilling performance and character. Yeah, so it really kind of skeeves me out. I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
Obviously, we're kind of doing a whole new beginning here for Hellboy. Also focusing specifically on a particular arc in the comic book series. What kind of made you guys want to go this route? And it looks like it's a lot more horror driven, and maybe a little more creepier. A lot of darker night scenes that we've seen as far from the trailer. But what made you want to kind of tell this story?
Well, it's always been my favorite Hellboy story, and I always felt, I've done some stories that are very, very short that I like, but this one was a good medium length, and it was Hellboy the way I was always most comfortable with Hellboy. Before the whole Beast of the Apocalypse stuff, End of the World stuff, it was just him as a guy having an adventure. It had a good, solid beginning and end. Sometimes they make these movies, they want to bring in a million different pieces from different stories. I said, this story works. The only thing we had to change really is the fact that it was almost more a Tom story than it was a Hellboy story. So we kept, like, people said, well, we're going to need a little bit more with Hellboy. So we spliced in the bits from the Chained Coffin, which is like the Hellboy's mother storyline. But still, it wasn't a scattershot thing of a million different pieces from a million different places. So it was solid. And, I got the opportunity to co-write the screenplay, which meant Chris Golden and I, who's also done Hellboy for a million years, we were able to put the pieces together in a way I thought that, made it work, rather than somebody else trying to second guess what a Hellboy story should be. We put it together, gave it to Brian, and then he didn't ruin it. Which is nice. It was nice to put the pieces together and give it to somebody. And the first thing to do is like, yeah, but maybe the legs should go on top of the head. No, he kept the skeleton in place.
I mean, if anything, I was pushing it more toward the original comic.
Yeah, we had made changes in our screenplay, kind of anticipating what we thought a studio would say. And Brian said, no, I want to do it more like the comic. So that's something you like to hear.
Yeah. And just for you, like, as far as, like, visually, the way you wanted to tell this story, what kind of, like, style were you going for? What,
Well, it was easy. The blueprints were all there in the original book. And it's not just Mike's favorite book, but a lot of fans too. It's a very beloved and iconic piece of the literature. It's all there. Richard Corbin, the late great genius. So between his work on that book and then Mike's work designing this entire sort of aesthetic of Hellboy, it was easy work. It tells you what it wants to be. It knows this is a contained folk horror story, which is what the essential Hellboy is. And it's dark and it's shadowy and it's things that rustle around in the woods and it's witches and it's it's not a space opera. This is a folk horror film.
Yeah,
story.
my feeling with Hellboy has always been you don't need to throw $1 billion at it. It has been one of my arguments on every movie up until this one is let's do less. Let's let it breathe more. It doesn't have to be about the end of the world every time.
Yeah, like just something I told a friend. I was like, it reminds me of like watching X-Files or like Hellsing. There's a lot of individual Hellsing episodes or adventures. Not everything has to be the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, our idea was always if we could just do a series of movies that were Hellboy in the Haunted Castle, Hellboy in this, and play with different genres and stuff like that. Hellboy's traveled all over the world. Do Hellboy in India. Do Hellboy in Mexico. Do Hellboy, and instead of doing all that in one movie, just let every movie have its own personality.
Yeah, movies have gotten really complicated these days. I don't know if you've noticed. Really complicated. And I personally, I don't understand the end of the universe. Like, that kind of means nothing to me. But I understand when, ordinary people have troubles and their lives are on the line and they're suffering and they need help from someone from the outside. I get that. So something about having a smaller stakes movie is really appealing.
Well, that's it. I mean, I get people who say, well, we have to raise the stakes. Like, your Hellboy is fighting for a guy's soul. That's pretty big stakes.
And also, one of the things that, we see from the trailer, this is not the team we've kind of known to show up in the previous movies. Where is Hellboy at in this, like, time frame of when the comic or the movie take place?
Oh, so you're quizzing me now. I don't think in the comic book world, I don't think Abe Sapien has been defrosted yet, and Liz is a little kid. So this is Hellboy by himself for the most part, as in the original story is by himself. The beauty is with the Bobbie Jo character, she carries in a way the fact that there is a BPRD, that they do go on missions, but we never need to see any of that. She represents all the stuff we don't see, and through her, we see as much as we need to know about what's going on back at headquarters.
Yeah, I always imagine that in that at that period of time, Hellboy was kind of like an independent contractor almost.
In my thinking, Hellboy would go on missions, and then when they turn around, they're finished, and they go, let's all get back on the plane. Where's Hellboy? Because he's just wandered off into the woods.
Yeah.
And, 2.5 weeks later, they find him, 200 miles away with, blood all over him. And he said, yeah, I ran into some shit.
Now, when you thought about doing this version of the character, what were you looking for from Jack as far as his interpretation of Hellboy? Obviously, we already have 2 on-screen portrayals already. Were you kind of looking to kind of step away from that and make sure you weren't, doing something that was similar, doing something that was kind of familiar?
There's nothing about this that's referential to the other movies at all. It's just straight to the source material. So in this book, it's set in the late 50s. It's a period piece. It's a younger Hellboy. Hellboy ages in dog years. So even a young Hellboy is sort of an old soul, right? So we were looking for a guy that kind of had that kind of sarcasm and humor and sort of dry wit to him, but who also carried that weight. A guy with a lot of soul and gravity to him, who you can just feel like that guy's really lived. He's gone through stuff.
He's seen some.
And in Jack, he just walks into the room and you're like, that's you, that's him. It doesn't hurt that he likes to smoke like a chimney too. So we didn't have to use movie cigarettes at all.